The president's poll numbers are an absolute free fall as his approval rating plunges to just 38%, down 4 percentage points from last month. And he also took a big hit when it came to his leadership, as a majority of those polled now say he does not have strong leadership skills. And it's about the same when it comes to competency, with more than half of those surveyed saying the Biden administration simply is not up to the job of running the government. It's amazing to me, Dave, starting with you. Quinnipiac is, to me, a organization that often oversamples Democrats. They told us Andrew Gillum was going to beat Ron DeSantis by 7 points the day before the election. That obviously didn't happen. In this poll, they sampled 5% more Democrats than Republicans. But even then, they're finding 55% don't believe that Joe Biden is competent, that he's not being effective in governing. Dave Rubin.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that Joe Biden is not competent. I mean, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he is the one making the decisions. I guess I'm just in a generous mood this morning. But this shouldn't really surprise anybody that isn't completely... This shouldn't really surprise anyone that isn't completely brainwashed by Washington Post and New York Times and CNN and MSNBC. I mean, look, we're having supply chain problems. They're telling us that $3.5 trillion equals zero. It just came out, I believe, yesterday that there were more COVID deaths in 2021 than in 2020. I mean, every single thing that comes out of this administration is a lie, and people can feel it. Remember, it's only, 9 months ago or so that Biden was sworn in, and we were told that we were going to heal and everything was going to be okay. And now he's got the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, going after parents who dare stand up at school boards against critical race theory. I mean, every single thing that they could be doing wrong, they're doing it, and you got to think at some point it's intentional for whatever reason.
Yeah, and America's noticing. Let's pull up the numbers. Abby, issue by issue. These are absolutely stunning. Let's look at this. Economy, he's underwater by 16 points. Military, underwater as commander-in-chief by 21 points. Taxes, underwater by 17. Foreign policy, underwater by 24. Immigration, negative 42. Mexican border, negative 44. And even COVID. This was the issue. Remember, he swore he was going to decimate the virus. He's underwater by 2. And as Dave Rubin points out, he's exactly right. ABC News reporting yesterday, just in, more Americans have died from COVID-19 this year from the virus than in all of 2020, according to newly released data from Johns Hopkins. This despite President Trump giving him vaccine, therapeutics, data on who is most affected by COVID, but still he's managed to bungle it.
Yeah, I think part of that, by the way, is probably having to do with Dr. Fauci and how politicized he's become, too. I think people are starting to associate what's coming out of Dr. Fauci's mouth with what Biden feels. And Jesse Waters said it perfectly, that it's not that people don't trust the science, they just don't trust the scientists. So there's that. And then just to hit on immigration, because you brought up that, Kaylee, according to this Quinnipiac poll, he only has a 25% approval rating of handling immigration, a 23% of handling the border. And just as you mentioned, it's because Americans are now feeling the effects of this presidency. We've been talking about the crisis at the border since day one. And I think a lot of people were like, it's not my issue. I don't live in a border state. But now you're seeing 10 governors join in with Governor Greg Abbott to come up with this 10-point system to help remedy the crisis at the border. You ask, where is President Biden and all of that? And then you hear the average American, their pocketbooks are hurting because of inflation. There was recent data that shows that an average family has to pay $175 more per month on food, fuel, and housing. So those are things that are really going to put a big ding in President Biden's numbers.
For sure. And not only are voters noticing, so too are Democrat candidates. It's always a real indicator when you have, in this case, Democrat candidate for governor, Terry McAuliffe, really the only major race this cycle. He's running for governor. When you have him saying this.
But we got to get Democrats out to vote. We are facing a lot of headwinds from Washington. As you know, the president is unpopular today, unfortunately, here in Virginia. So we have got to plow through.
Emily, this is a Democrat gubernatorial candidate calling him unpopular. This is a Democrat gubernatorial candidate who wouldn't say the name of Joe Biden on a debate stage. What does this tell you?
I think it signals a huge changing of the tides in terms of the reality in which most of us are living in that, frankly, the Democrat Party has been hiding behind for quite some time. I think Abby hit the nail on the head when she sort of itemized exactly what regular, ordinary Americans care about. And Dave hit the nail on the head when he talked about what then candidate Biden promised us. I think what we are seeing instead is sort of, instead of an inheritance of what he claimed was a corrupt administration and that this was going to be a return to normalcy, a return to decency, a return to unity, we are getting the absolute absence, and on top of that, absolute incompetence. We are receiving now and getting the destruction, the dismantling of everything that was secure before he took office, and now these polls are reflecting the absolute disgust because this administration could only sort of hold on to the mirage for so long. I know we're going to talk about in a moment the fact that they're putting up literally a fake White House set for him to broadcast from, and to me, that's sort of the cherry on top, the fact that he is the Wizard of Oz sham, that they promised us a certain what now we realize was a mirage and wouldn't have existed to begin with, but behind it, it's simply a curtain. There's a curtain with a small man operating a bunch of things or someone operating him, and it's this sham that we are supposed to believe in, and yet now everyone is seeing reality, Democratic candidates included.
No doubt. And Emily, you raise an interesting point with this set. You know, I was texting with Judd Deere. He was my former top deputy there in the White House, and he did all of the managing of the teleprompter and the mechanics of the press shop. And he said to me they've basically constructed a Disney-like set in South Court, so that's a separate building from the White House. It's very odd when you have the powerful setting of the White House across the street with multiple locations within. And he surmised that in the cabinet room in the Oval Office, President Trump often read from his notebook in those cases. It's hard to hide the teleprompter. So maybe that's what this is all about, Harris, keeping him on script.
Well, Ari Fleischer, formerly White House staff under a previous president, just told me last hour that that's exactly what it's all about. But it's a little bit even deeper than that. Keeping him from going off script, but also presenting a situation where it looks like he is more nimble and more on the ball because you can't see the teleprompter. And I thought about that because you and I, Kayla, you were a guest on one of my very early political town halls in Iowa before that political season was really heating up before 2016. And so what's interesting about that is you can have a conversation about transparency and let people kind of see the window of the world that they know we're living in. I mean, this is a talk show, so we're not reading anything right now. I mean, we're all talking to each other. But people see that there are, you know, that there's accoutrement that comes with us, right? And it's okay to show that. Ari said the thing that bothered him most was that tiny little desk he was behind, because that just doesn't look presidential.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even like the resolute desks that you had in former presidents that were maybe in wartime, and those were sometimes smaller. FDR, you know, you'd have a smaller desk. But that's like the kids' table at a wedding. I do want to get to two things. The president's consistency is what I'm looking at in those polling numbers. Can we pop them back up for just a second with all the different topics where he's underwater? And by that, I mean all the topics that he's all underwater on. That's one problem. But the president only has two jobs. And so what you're seeing is consistently these have to deal with one of those jobs, national security, military, foreign policy, immigration, Mexican border. I mean, those, and I would argue coronavirus is also a national security issue, considering that we're not testing people the same way we're testing people in the United States or making them live by our rules the same way we have to. But his other job is to govern, and that makes up the rest of that list. So he's got two jobs, and those categories are representative of the jobs, the two things that he's not doing. And they are consistently underwater and consistently bad. And Quinnipiac is one poll, but go look at Real Clear, where it takes a conglomerate of polls. I mean, it's not looking good for him. Not now.
No, and that small desk, perhaps emblematic of the Biden presidency. He looks like the sidekick of a late-night comedy show. What an absolute and total disgrace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.